Hey everyone, welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. We are just doing a real life barn check here. Hey, it's Melissa. Thank you for joining us. Please do subscribe. Just doing a real life barn check here, bringing you in the barn with us and letting you see the Cornish Rock Cross meat production chickens that we're raising. We've got basically 3 groups. Going to show you those. I'm going to tell you where we're at in the stage of things. I'm watching the birds moving around here. This is a group of birds that are about 3 days away from going to the slaughterhouse. They'll be taken there. They'll be processed into poultry, and we bring that back to our farm. And we're in the 2nd year of being able to market our poultry directly to consumers. We started out raising these birds by just raising them for ourselves because we were a family that really didn't eat a lot of chicken. We raised beef and we raised pork for ourselves, and we eat that for our protein, and we never really cared for chicken. And so several years ago, I think it was 2020, hey, got a friend here, 2020, we said, well, let's try raising chicken and see if we like the chicken better that we would raise on our own. So, we kind of looked into, well, what breeds do you raise? Because we'd always had egg production chickens, and we knew there wasn't a whole lot of meat on those. So we went ahead and checked into these Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens and started learning how to raise those. So like I said, it was probably 2020, and we were raising those to see what they were like. So the first flocks, we had maybe like 25 at a time. I think 25 at a time was all we did that year. And we had some really bad luck. We dealt with predators. We dealt with loss from heat. It took us a real learning curve even that year to just do it for ourselves. But what we learned was that we really liked chicken. So when we raised those flocks, we actually processed those flocks out on our own initially. And now we don't do that. We take them to the slaughterhouse to a USDA inspected processor. But initially we went through that process ourselves. So not the first year, but the next year we started a flock of 100, didn't have a processor lined up, wanted to get a processor lined up, but couldn't get a processing date. So actually ended up butchering most of those. We had a 19% loss in that flock of 100. So we had 81 that were successful, that were survivors in that flock. So we butchered, me, my husband, my 3 sons, we butchered 81 birds that year ourselves. Our teenage sons were so sick of processing chickens. They said, we're never having chickens. We're never doing this. So anyway, so that's where we, really got the live and learn going with raising the Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens, and we got firsthand experience with processing them. But through it all, what we learned was the texture and the flavor of the chicken that you raise yourself is so good. It's very superior to what we're accustomed to in American food chain supply. So we highly recommend it. If it's something you're wanting to do as a family for your household, we highly recommend it. Maybe try to hit the times of year when the weather's kind of mild. And I think the smaller the flock is, the more kind of control you can have over the process, so you can have a good outcome and really limit the flock mortality doing it that way too, the smaller the flock is, and being able to control as much as you can. But highly recommend it. If it's something you would try for yourself, raising your own chicken, we highly recommend it. If it's not something you would do for yourself and you really like chicken that you get at the grocery store, we encourage you to seek out a farmer that raises chicken and buy some poultry from them. And I feel like I can almost guarantee you're going to love it. You're going to love the chicken. So at any rate, we're just going to do the barn check, and I was going to just give you some of my thoughts on being aware of the production inputs that go into raising these birds. So we're, like I've been saying, we're looking at a flock that's we take them to the processor at 6 weeks old. So you could raise them like at out to 8 weeks if you wanted to. I mean, the longer you raise them, you basically just add feed costs to them. And really by 6 weeks, they're finished, they're ready to go to the processor. They're big enough for you to go to the processor and go ahead and have processed into poultry. So, you can continue feeding them and grow them a little larger, but this is a good size for us. These birds are going to dress out probably around 5 pounds at the size that they are now. So we're probably looking at about 8-pound birds here. And they're going to dress out a nice size, whether they do some of that. That's another reason we kind of stop at 6 weeks. That's a male there that's standing up, and it's a hen sitting down in front of us. Especially the males, as you go past 6 weeks, they're going to start to become a little feistier, a little more aggressive. So we tend to just raise them out to about 6 weeks and then get them to the processor. There's that big guy. That biggest one was a runt. But anyway, so production inputs that you need to be aware of. So birds, you're going to pay for chicks. Depending on where you are in the country, we're in the United States, depending on where you're in the world probably, but we're talking about United States costs. Depending on where you're at, it's going to cost different. I'm going to gauge, I don't know, $2.85 to $3 a chick to get them. And some of that's going to depend on, do you just take a straight run where you get a mixture of guys and gals, take them as hatched, or do you request only pullets, which would be the girls, or do you request only roosters? So that's going to make a difference. But you're definitely going to have the cost of the chicks. You're going to have the cost of the feed. And so our reference point that we gauge off of is, for every 20 birds that we order, we plan on, no, I'm saying that backwards. For every 100 birds that we order in, we plan on 20 bags of feed. So I'm going to say that you could plan on a bird eating 10 pounds of feed from start to finish. So just take that and figure that out. The feeds that we buy are available in 50-pound bags. So every 5 birds you raise would take a bag of feed to grow out in about 6 weeks. So you've got that input. You're also going to have bedding. You've got to do something about what's on the floor under your birds. We use wood shavings. We use pine wood shavings. Again, depending on where you are, those come in like a bale, like comparable to the size of a bale of hay. They may cost, hello, Mr. Big Stuff. They may cost about $10 a bag. If you're raising a small flock, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 bags a week can get you through. We try to buy them kind of like 40 bags at a time, and we just use it as we need it. I don't question it, because you got to keep the floor in good shape for these birds. Now, so those are definite inputs, your production inputs you're going to pay for. You're going to have the chicks, you're going to have feed, you're going to have bedding. There's no way around that. Okay, you need to have electric, because even if you end up doing something outside, you got to start them in a pen. So you need electric, because you may need heat lamps like you're seeing there, and we've got electric light overhead. So you're going to need access to electric. So you're going to be paying for electric. I don't know what that's going to cost you. You need water. So if you're paying for water utility, that's going to cost you something. I don't know what that's going to cost you on your end, but be prepared for that. If you process your own birds, you're going to have to get set up with that equipment, but the processing itself won't cost you anything. If you're going to take your birds to a USDA processor or to a custom processor, depending on what you're doing with that poultry that you get, you're going to pay for that. And so I'm going to tell you, plan on minimum $3 a bird. By the time they slaughter, even process into a whole bird and package it with like vacuum seal packaging, plan on at least $3 a bird. It's probably gonna be more. And if you want special cuts, plan on maybe around $5 a bird by the time you get the cuts that you request. So, and like us, I know that it's gonna cost me $100 in fuel to go to the processor, fuel in my truck, and $100 in fuel in my truck to go back to the processor and pick up the poultry. So those are costs you might have. So be aware of those things. We'll try to do a cost breakdown in the future of numbers on our flocks, but those are costs, inputs you can be aware of. So this is this flock, about 200 birds going to the processor in about 3 days. Here's another little flock. They're about 2.5 weeks old. and there's about 220 of them. And so you can see we've got all the different equipment set up, and that's another thing you'll have to purchase or have on hand, you know, whether it's the waters, the feeders, the heat lamps, and if you've got to move your birds, those transport crates like that. So those are all inputs you might need if you are going to raise meat chickens, but it is well worth it if it's something you want to do for your own household. Another reference point I can give you, we would say household of 5, about 60 birds would be great for the year, even 50 to 60 birds. So maybe you'd raise a flock of 25 in the spring and a flock of 25 in the fall. So put any questions or ideas you have in the comments. Please subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you again soon back in the barn.